Interesting question. I mean, ordinarily, you cannot sue the government. So you're asking about suing the importers in order to have them essentially demonstrate the safety or efficacy of the product. I'm not sure under what what the claim would be. Essentially, you would be asking the court to compel the importer to demonstrate the product was safe. If the FDA, the federal jurisdiction, doesn't itself compel that kind of information, I don't see how there would be a private right of action for you to be able to sue them. You probably would not be able to, would not prevail in that kind of an action.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi. And this isn't really a question. It's like my feeling is that if American companies are outsourcing to China and India or wherever, and that's to keep their bottom line down with cheap labor and everything, why should FDA or other companies, or other, overseas companies in the United States have to pay with the taxpayer dollar to check these things? Why shouldn't the companies have to fund some of this inspection that's going on?
It's a good question. You're asking essentially about user fees. There are a number of bills right now that are in Congress that some of the House and the Senate as well. Senator Durbin has a bill which imposes user fees on imported food shipments. Congressman Dingell has essentially made a shot across the bow of the agency and included user fees for both food and drug imports. I will say that without discussing the value of user fees one way or the other, I will say that those two components in those bills at least really focus on the finished product testing aspect. It's funding the border operation. If you think of it, your question is actually, I think, well stated, because what you're asking about is also the inspection that's required to build quality into the product, and that user fee program has not yet been floated. In testimony before oversight, I did make note of the fact that one way to perhaps assist in funding for the inspection would be at the registration level, that when companies register their facilities, perhaps a user fee could be built in at that level. And therefore, you would not have foreign companies just registering in case they want to sell to the United States or registering because it's free. You would have them paying for that registration process, knowing that they would in part be funding the agency coming to their facility to conduct the safety inspection that's really required, so that your border operation is essentially confirming or it's focusing on the higher risk. And the answer is there's quite a number of bills that are discussing that very issue, and you can see them, of course, on the various websites of those who've sponsored them. And I actually think we'll probably end up with a situation where we'll have part user fees and part a certification, third-party certification process or a foreign government certification process. And those companies that perhaps participate in the certification would probably enjoy maybe a lower user fee, and then there would be an audit process in that certification. That's probably where we will end up.
We're talking with Benjamin England. Our next call, Reno, Nevada. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a lot of trepidation about products from China or any country that don't have health laws covering their citizens. You made mention about consumer safety or this lady that called before, she wanted this done by the companies that have sent our jobs overseas. Well, what makes her think that they're going to protect us? We have consumer protection laws here as far as product safety goes. And what I would like to know, sir, with all due respect, is why does the federal government think that the risk is acceptable? That these products coming from China or wherever where people are being poisoned or our animals are being poisoned, why is that acceptable? And I have a real problem with that, because now I go to the market, I don't know what to buy anymore. And it really concerns me.
And I sympathize with you. I don't, first of all, I don't speak for the government anymore, not working there anymore. I will say, though, that Consumer Product Safety Commission, the FDA, Department of Health and Human Services, and now the White House, I think, are agreeing that it's not acceptable. The question is, where do they go from here? The proposals that have been put forward are primarily these risk-based programs, which I think are critical. I think they're necessary. You can't inspect everything, and you wouldn't want to. So the question is, how do you figure out what do you inspect? I think, though, that one of the largest issues has to do with the funding. I mean, when you have 200 people, 250 people, make it 500 people, trying to manage 18 million shipments, I just think you have a very large mismatch. Some of that, I think, and that's not, I mean, that's not the FDA's fault. I mean, this is not a new problem. I mean, in 1997, there were about 4 million entries, 4 million shipments that FDA had jurisdiction over. In 2002, there were about 8 million, maybe 9 million. Now they're looking at 16 to 18 million. It's doubling about every 5 years. And basically, the agency just hasn't turned that corner, the NAFTA corner, recognizing that we're in a global supply. And part of answering that is unquestionably having more inspectors and not necessarily relying on industry. However, the fact is also that industry in many respects is the front line, and the industry does have interest in having high quality and safe products. And so that does bear itself out in the marketplace. But unquestionably, the agency must be stronger. It must be better financed. It must have an IT system that has the capacity to deal with all this deluge of data and then integrate it and be able to figure out where it should be focusing its resources.
Instead of user fees, why not an effort by Congress just to increase the manpower and the budget of the FDA?
And Congressman Rosa DeLauro has done that. She's the chairwoman on agricultural subcommittee on appropriations, and FDA obtains its appropriations from the Ag Bill. And there has been, in both the House and the Senate, a proposal to increase the number of resources in order to increase the agency's ability to try to deal with these risks. The concern seems to be that at least this Congress is worried about throwing money at the agency if they don't have confidence that the agency is going to use that money in a way that truly addresses the greatest risks. And that's a debate that's going on now. Partly the answer to that is the presidential work plan. That's the administration's response to that. And I think in many respects they come up with many good ideas. What you don't see is more bodies, more IT, ways. Now maybe we're early still on that, but there is in fact an effort to do that. Unfortunately, they're operating under a continuing resolution still, and so that hasn't gone through.
Viola, Missouri, good morning. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'd like the attorney there to tell the truth. After the FDA determines that a product is poisonous and should be taken off the shelves so that the consumers will not poison themselves, there is no federal law requiring the stores to take these poisonous products off the shelves so that people don't accidentally poison themselves. So they can determine that the products are poisonous, which, he has made clear, but there is no enforcement requiring states or the federal government to have these products taken off the shelves, and therefore people will be poisoned. So this man is useless, and the people that he worked with are useless because they determine a product is poisonous, yet the public is allowed to poison themselves because the products are still on the shelves.
As far as the agency's authorities, I will say that it's absolutely correct that the Food and Drug Administration lacks mandatory recall authority.